Hello, Big Team. Hello, friends. Welcome to Lizziefaye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and it is June the 1st. For all intents and purposes, summer is here. Most schools are about out, and, June is here. It's time for summer reading and everything. And I have finished up my reading frenzy that is the month of May. You may or may not know that I am one of the co-hosts of Middle Grade May and Book a Day in May. And so for the last several years, I have been doing a Book a Day in May project with my daughter. And then I've just been kind of, reading whatever else I want to read on top of that. But this year, since our theme for Middle Grade May was the tortoise and the hare, we sort of said, okay, everybody, you can be the hare, you can be the tortoise, do what you want to do with that. And I, of course, decided I would be the hare because I need to read as much as possible so that I can try to, unhaul some of the books that I'm done with when I'm finished with them, that kind of thing. And also because I like to read with my daughter. I like to try to, enhance her life as much as possible. She is developmentally disabled. She has autism and epilepsy. And so I do, try to read with her on a daily basis. So I just decided I was going to try to break my own personal record this month and read for sure a book a day in May for her and a book a day in May for me. And then if I could go above and beyond that, that would be great. So I've already done a wrap up for the first 10 or 11 days of May and then the middle 10. And so now what I'm going to talk about today in this video is specifically what I read and finished during the last 10 days of May, which is specifically May 22nd through May 31st. And I finished a total of 29 books. 10 of those, of course, were with Emily because we read a book a day together. And then of the 29, 15 of them were in print. So the 10 I read with her plus 5 from myself were print. That left 14 that I listened to on audio. Now, of the 29 books, 10 of them were children's books. Those are the ones that I read with her. 2 were adult books. One of the adult books was in print and one was on audio. I didn't set out at the beginning of the month to listen to that one on audio, but it went with the print book that I was reading. It was basically a Bible study book, and I decided to go ahead and read both of those. There was also some videos that I watched. I just did the whole experience, and it was great. I did that during the second half of the month. Then that left 17 middle grade books, and of the 17 middle grade books that I finished during the last 10 days of the month, 4 of those were books that I read in print. Now, of the 4 books, 2 of them I started at the beginning of the month. One of them I started at around day 10 or 12, and then one I started at around day 20, like 20th or 21st, something like that, during the last 10 days of the month. So, I just kind of kept things rolling. As I would finish things, I would start new things. I usually had 2 or 3 audiobooks going at one time. I, of course, was reading all my devotional material. I have 2 devotional books that I read to myself. Sometimes I'll read them out loud to Emily if she's already sitting in there. Then 2 VeggieTales devotionals that I'm reading with her. And then I had another Bible study book, one that I was reading the first half of the month, and then another that I read during the second half of the month. And that was the print book I just finished. And then there was an audio book that kind of went along with that. So anyway, altogether, 29 books for the last 10 days of the month. Now, I'm not going to tell you my total for the entire month yet, because I will do kind of just an overall summary wrap up. I won't go back and rehash all the books, but I might talk about my favorites, some that I wouldn't recommend, things like that. I haven't really put all that together yet, so I'm not going to film that today. It'll be later in the week, but I just wanted to go ahead and get this done while I've got the books here. We got home from church a little while ago, so I'm dressed, and I thought, well, Sunday is a good day to film, so let's just get this done. Let me start with what I read with Emily. Now, for the first 10 or 11 days, we read mostly Caldecott winners. We covered the decade of the 2010s, and I did do a video about those. So during this last 10 days, we spent 5 of those days, and we read from 2020 to 2024. Now, my library does not have the winner yet from 2025. So I checked a couple of times, and it still was not there. The children's librarian did tell me that it was off back order, and she was ordering it, but we weren't able to read the newest Caldecott winter yet. But I will show you the ones that we did read. And I don't know if I can remember the actual correct order, but it doesn't really matter anyway. Now, I'm not going to do a separate Caldecott video about these books yet. I'm going to wait and, finish this decade. So 2029, at some point in 2029, we'll do a video about them. But I thought maybe you might like to hear about them. Now, this was actually a reread for me. The Undefeated, it's by Kwame Alexander, and it was illustrated by Kadir Nelson. This is just basically celebrating people in Black history and a lot of the strides and accomplishments that many African Americans were able to make. And I thought it was wonderful. Now, it is basically a poem, and so each page does not have a lot of writing. And I knew who some of the people were just from, the illustrations, but I thought that it was very helpful that at the end of the book, each of the people featured does have an explanation here, a kind of a biographical sketch, so that you can know a little bit more about each of the people featured in the book. This is excellent. Very, very good. And I believe not only was it a Caldecott winner, it was a Newbery Honor book. I think this is the next one, which would make it the winner from 2021. It's called We Are Water Protectors. This is about Indigenous people who have basically been taught from childhood to take care of our water, take care of our resources. It also refers to a black snake that pollutes the water, and you learn from the author's notes that this is specifically about the fight of the native people and the pipelines that have, gone through and encroached on their lands and do cause water pollution. So this was very informative. It was beautifully done, and I will show you a little bit of the artwork. This one is by Carol Lindstrom and illustrated by Michaela Goad. This one also has water in the title, but it is called Watercress. This is told from the perspective of a young child whose parents are Asian immigrants, and they are, in the United States and just, basically struggling to have what they need. And they're driving along the roadside one day, and they spot some watercress that is growing in the ditch. And they pull over and stop and, have the kids get out, and they all pick the watercress and then come home and eat it. There's two children, and I believe this is from the girl's perspective, and she is actually writing about a memory that she had, and just talking about how when she was young, she did not really appreciate what her family and her parents went through to get where they were. She did not appreciate what she had. She always felt like, they didn't have the right clothes and things like that. And she just didn't understand what her family had gone through and how little they had to make do with. And then, of course, by the time she was grown, she had a better understanding of that. And she wrote this book as an honor to her parents to just basically show that she finally understood what, what they had and what they had done for the children. And she appreciated that free meal of watercress that they were able to find on the side of the road, even though she acknowledged that at the time she was very embarrassed and just did not want any part of it. So here are some of the pictures. There they are, picking the watercress, getting back in the car. She was very embarrassed. And at home, she didn't want to eat any of it. But then her parents started telling the story about how when they were young, they didn't have much to eat. And basically, you understand from the story that the little brother here did not survive. There was just not enough to eat. And she kind of realizes all of a sudden that, oh, maybe I'm not so bad off. Maybe I should try the watercress. Anyway, it was beautifully done. And then this one, Hot Dog by Doug Salati, was really cute. It's about a dog and the owner, and they live basically in an urban area where, you know, it's just hustle and bustle. And so one day they get in a taxi, and then they get on a train, and then they get on a boat, and they go out where there's fresh air. And this author and illustrator did such a great job of illustrating the difference between the urban polluted air and then going out to the open air. It was literally a breath of fresh air to turn this page. And oh my goodness, it was just so beautifully done. They enjoyed their time. And then after spending the day outside and in the fresh air, of course, they have to come back home. But still, it was very nice. And, you know, it makes you appreciate when you live in a place where there's not a lot of pollution and not a lot of urban sprawl. It makes you appreciate that a lot more. And I've lived mostly in small towns or the country. I've spent a little bit of time in big cities, but not enough time in big cities that I'm completely comfortable with it. And I think I would get a little claustrophobic being in an urban situation like where they started out. But this was just a really good illustration of the difference between the urban, you know, kind of polluted place versus the open air. And this little dog enjoyed getting out into the open air. Then the last one of the Caldecott winners that we read is the winner from 2024. It's called Big by Vashti Harrison. And this is about a sweet, beautiful little girl who starts out, you know, being told, oh, you're such a big girl, you're such a big girl. And, you know, when you're a baby, that's a good thing. But then she wants to be a ballerina, and all of a sudden, that's not a good thing. And she has to really come to terms with herself. And eventually she turns around, and these hurtful words that people have given her, she gives them back. She basically says, you know, these words are hurtful. I am happy being who I am. And she goes from there. I thought it was beautifully done. And the artwork, oh my goodness, this is just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And this is just a precious little child. They did such a great job with the illustrations of this. So we had 5 other books that I read with Emily to finish out the rest of the 10 days. A couple of these I read before the Caldecott winners, and a couple of them I read after. One day I just kind of dug around in her book bag to find another book that we could read, and I've forgotten that we had Nate the Great and Me, The Case of the Fleeing Fang. So she has a few other Nate the Great books, and I think we got this at the bookstore where I work not too long ago, and we hadn't had a chance to read it, and this was really cute. It's basically a little first chapter book, and this one has the reader to kind of help guess and help observe the clues as you go along. So it is also for an emerging mystery reader. So I thought that was neat, and it was really cute. Then this one I got somewhere, I don't know. I decided I would go ahead and read this to Emily because I didn't want to get it mixed up with a collection that I have of these that are from my childhood. I did not get this one from my childhood. This one came from one of the many book sources where I tend to get things, you know, books free and things like that. And so I'm going to add this either to a Little Free Library or to my eBay store, but I thought I'd go ahead and read it to Emily. I don't recall ever reading this one when I was young. It's called Alexander Kitten, and it's basically just a little kitten who thinks it's his job to protect the barnyard, and he goes about it not in the best way, and he gets a lesson or two. He gets schooled, but it's really cute, and I just love the artwork of these old vintage books. This particular book, this is a Rand McNally Jr. Elf book, and I believe, if I'm reading the Roman numerals correctly, it is from 1965. Super cute little book. And then two of them we read because I have been having kind of a series of Disney reunions in the month of May. If you don't live around here and you're not, well versed in all things Disney, you might not know that on May the 1st, 1989, that was the opening day of the Disney MGM Studios, which is now called the Disney Hollywood Studios. So I was there, not on opening day. I was off that day, but I got to work the press event, which was the night before. And then, forever after that, for many, many years. But that press event was amazing. And then that first year that the park was open, I was a tour guide with the Backstage Studio Tour, and I drove the shuttles and all that stuff. Then I auditioned for Disney Entertainment, and the very first show that I ever did opened in May of 1990, and that was Here Come the Muppets. So ever since Here Come the Muppets, and then another live action Muppet show that we had after that, Muppets on Location, and basically all of the Disney character entertainer people who worked at the studios in the 1990s, we're a pretty close-knit group. We have a Facebook group, and it's very active. People are always posting, and so we had a gathering, actually a series of gatherings, the first weekend of May, I think. One of the gatherings was to meet up at the park, at the studios, to go and see Muppet Vision 3D one more time before it closes. I think the closing date for it is going to be June the 7th, so it's coming up really soon. Then there were a few people that didn't get to do that, and so we had another little gathering just this past week on Friday, and I went to that one as well, and we just had the best time, and it was so fun seeing, old friends again. So the one we had this past week had a dual purpose, because also, many of us worked at the Voyage of the Little Mermaid. Well, if you don't know, the Voyage of the Little Mermaid was shut down during COVID, and it never reopened. And I worked at that show from almost the beginning up until the end. And so that theater needed a lot of rehab, a lot of work, and it's been, several years in the doing. But a brand new show has just opened there. It is also a Little Mermaid show, but it's called Ariel's Musical Adventure. And so several of us wanted to go and see that show because it just opened this week, and it was beautiful. It was fantastic. So on the day that Emily and I were meeting up with that group to see the Mermaid show for the first time, the new Mermaid show, we read this one, Disney's The Little Mermaid, and enjoyed this a lot. This is just your basic retelling of the Little Mermaid movie, and we enjoyed it, but it helped to get Emily in the mindset of going to see the new show. And also a couple of days before that, we read this one because, we had gone and seen the Muppets earlier in May. We didn't actually get to sit through the show that day because Emily was having a seizure day, and she was just not sitting. She just did not want to sit for it. But we read this book, The Man Who Made Puppets by Spencer Thomas, and we did watch the Muppet Vision 3D just the other day, on the same day that we saw the new Mermaid show. So we had just read this one together. This is just like a little kind of reading book for schools. It doesn't have very many pages. This is one of those little books that you would use in a classroom. I'm not sure where I ran across it, but, anytime I see anything Muppets, then I'm going to grab it and read it and keep it if I can. So, anyway, we read this one together. And then the last one that we read on May 31st is actually a Newbery winner. This is one of the few Newbery winners that are more picture book than middle grade book. Most of the Newbery winners are what I would call middle grade books. This was from 2015, so this was the winner from 2016. It's Last Stop on Market Street by Matt Della Pena and illustrated by Christian Robinson. Now, I enjoyed this the first time around, but this time reading it with Emily made me kind of realize that it's kind of a tough book to read to kids. Now, it does have a good lesson to it. But for Emily, it kind of went over her head. And because this is a paperback, which, you know, is neither here nor there, but it just so happens this is a paperback, it was hard to hold the book and to point out things. And some of the text is black on dark, a dark background, and that made these old eyes have some difficulty reading it. Like this right here. That was kind of hard to see. I would much prefer, if you're going to have a dark background, that you have white lettering. You know, that to me makes more sense. Anyway, it's about a grandmother and her grandchild. They come out of church. It's a Sunday afternoon. They take the bus. They get off at the last stop. And spoiler alert, it's a soup kitchen. And they go there to help serve food for the homeless people who come to eat there. And so it is a very good book with a very good message. The other thing that bothered me a little bit, and I guess they were trying to just help to be a little more identifiable, but the grammar that was used was not correct grammar. And I'm sure that this is probably more realistic, but my little grammatical teacher heart kind of did a double take with that. But anyway, it was fine. I don't know that I would have picked it as a Newbery winner. I'll have to go look and see what the honor books were for this same year and just see what the competition was. I just need to see if I would agree with the committee on this one. But I also read 2 other Newbery winners, and I finished them on the same day as that one. So I finished 3 Newbery winners all on the same day. Now, one of them was the book that I had been reading all month, and this was a reread, but I didn't remember it. I had listened to Moon Over Manifest by Claire Vanderpool on audio right after it came out, which was in the early 2010s, somewhere around 2012, I think, probably. I think was when it came out. This book was published in 2010, so that means it was the winner in 2011. Anyway, it was good, but I'm not sure I agree with the committee on this one either. It was slow. It was slow going. I did not always want to pick it up. I think I picked it up and read a few pages every day, except maybe two days out of the whole month. But that's how long it took me to read it, because it just didn't grab me and make me want to, read and read and read. So, it's historical. It was set during Prohibition time. It was very interesting, and it had a good storyline. It had a kind of a dual timeline. So it was entertaining, but just not as good as I would have liked. The other Newbery winner that I reread is Flora and Ulysses by Kate DiCamillo. I started this just maybe like 5 or 6 days ago, and this is delightful. Now, it is very whimsical. It is not realistic at all, but there is a realistic undercurrent. It's about families. It's about accepting each other, loving each other, family conflict. There's a lot going on in this book, but told in a fantastical, whimsical sort of way. And I rated it 5 stars. Again, it is delightful. It is partly told in pictures and partly in text. This was illustrated by K.G. Campbell, and it is it's wonderful. The group read from Middle Grade May was Aesop's Fables, and I'm not sure if anybody but me read it or not. I'm not even sure if Beth got a chance to read it, because she ended up being so busy just wrapping up her school year and everything. I went on her Discord once, and it didn't look like anybody was talking about it yet, but I read it. It was supposed to be the group read. It's okay if nobody read it. I'm glad that I had an excuse to read it. I thought it was excellent. Now, this is one of those, though, that's very dated. There are words used in here, animal names used in here that we don't really use anymore, because those names have come to mean other things in today's modern language. So you could not turn this book loose in a middle school classroom, not in this form. It would need to be edited, which is sad, but it would need to be, because you wouldn't get anything accomplished the rest of the day. There would just be too much snickering and giggling and things like that. But I enjoyed it. Some of the life lessons in here are very profound. There's a few that are like, I don't necessarily agree with that, but, I don't really see the point. But most of them are very good life lessons. And I would say if you have not ever read Aesop's Fables, try to get a version of it that has a lot of them in there. I think there was over 200 in this one, and I'm not sure how many total have ever been gathered together. There are some versions of this that have fewer in it. On Audible Plus, there is a version that I think has over 100. But this one had over 200, I think like 230 or something, because I read 4 or 5 a day. I think I averaged 5 a day and got done, on the last day of the month. So anyway, very good, very enjoyable. And thank you, Beth, for suggesting this as our group read. I also had a couple of books I read in print that were sent to me by authors. One of them I finished up on the last day of the month. I didn't start this one until around the 12th or 13th, I think. This is All Battles End at Sunset by Jared Acuna. This is a Christian historical middle grade book set in 1562 Florida. It was very interesting. I wasn't really sure how it was all gonna, come together. It actually ended up being kind of sad, and it makes me want to read some more about that point of Florida history. And it is kind of fitting that it was told from a Christian perspective, because I did not realize that there were people who were martyred in Florida, 1562 Florida, for their faith. So, yeah, it was really interesting. It also we also have some scenes with the Timucuan Indians. There's the Spanish and the French. Both of them, kind of fought over Florida, and it was very, very interesting. So if you ever have a chance to read this or anything else about that time in Florida history, then I hope you will. And if you've ever been to St. Augustine, Florida, it is such a wonderful historic place that is considered the oldest city in the U.S. And it's definitely worth visiting and learning about all the history there. Before I get into the middle grade books, let me tell you about the 2 adult books that I read. The one I read in print is a study guide for Don't Give the Enemy a Seat at Your Table by Louis Giglio. Now, there is a full book of this with this title. My library didn't have it. The only copy I could get was an audio copy on Hoopla. This I found randomly somewhere, and I thought, oh, that looks interesting. But this is a study guide for like a group Bible study. It's broken down into 6 sections. And so as I started reading it, it would say, read chapters 1 and 2 of the book. And I thought, oh, well, I need the book. And then it would say, watch session 1 of the video series. And I thought, oh, well, I need to watch the video. So the videos are all on YouTube, so I had no problem doing that. And thankfully, the full version of the book is on Hoopla on audio. So I just kind of basically followed what the book said. I read the discussion questions in this book. And then when it said to, read chapters out of the book, then I listened to those on my phone. And then when it said to watch a video, then I went to YouTube and watched the video. So I did all 3 of those things and finished everything up by the last day of the month. And it was great. I really enjoyed this. If this sounds interesting to you, then if you have access to Hoopla, you can find the actual book. You don't really need this little study guide. This just kind of gives you a guide for just sort of thinking about it, processing it, and just kind of, helping you work your way through it. But if you can get the book, that's great. Or you can just go on YouTube, look up Don't Give the Enemy a Seat at Your Table, Louis Giglio, session 1, and there are 6 sessions. So you can just go through those, and you can pretty much get most of the information just by listening and watching those 6 sessions. And I would recommend it. I thought it was excellent. Okay, what I have left are the middle grade books that I listen to on audio. 11 of them are series books, and only 2 of them are standalone books, and those are by the same author. So let me just go through these real quick. I did listen to one complete series. I wouldn't call it a trilogy either, because most people are probably familiar with Ella Enchanted, and this was written quite a few years ago, and of course this is the movie tie-in cover. I did not realize that there was was a sequel to this until I happened to look it up and discovered that Gail Carson Levine also wrote Fairest. This one is more of a Snow White retelling, and there are a couple of crossover characters, mainly the fairy godmother Lucinda. She's the one who gave Ella the gift of obedience when she was born, and so she is, up to shenanigans in this book. So then several years later, I think both of these were written in the 90s, and then in the early 2000s, she wrote Ogre Enchanted, which is considered book 0. It's a prequel to these two. And this was the very last audiobook that I finished on May 31st. This was really fun. It's about a girl. She's a healer, and she gets turned into an ogre. She has to find someone who will love her for herself before 62 days are done, or she'll remain an ogre forever. So kind of a Beauty and the Beast sort of a thing. Anyway, this was a lot of fun. If I would have had another 2 hours, I would have listened to the sequel to this one. This is So Be It by Sarah Weeks. I did not know until I finished this one that there is a sequel to this called Soof. I did check it out from the library. I do have access to it on Everand. I just ran completely out of time, but I am going to listen to it probably this month while I've got the book checked out from the library. Anyway, this was wonderful. I have owned this book for I don't know how long. Quite a few years, and I had just never had a chance to read it, so I listened to it on audio. It's about a girl whose mother is disabled. She is developmentally disabled, and they are living with a woman who is an agoraphobic. I think that's the correct word for someone who can't leave the house. And it's just fascinating, and it's beautiful. I rated it 5 stars. I thought it was excellent. Another book I would have listened to the sequels to if I had had more time is Lion Boy by Zizu Corder. I'm probably going to listen to this again. These are on Audible Plus, and the whole trilogy is on there. I listened to this one on a Playway because my library had it available, and I thought, well, I'll just get this. It'll be handy because while my phone is charging, I can listen to this one, and I can, carry it around easier. So that's what I did. But I think that I kind of, because I was getting near the end of the month, I kind of raced through it and I didn't catch all the little details. I definitely picked up on the story. It's about a young boy whose parents are kidnapped, and he goes on the hunt to try to find them, and the person who kidnapped his parents are trying to get to him also. He somehow ends up with a circus, and it just goes from there. And he can talk to cats, and they can understand him, and he can understand them. So it's really interesting, and I definitely want to read the whole series. It's called Lion Boy. On CD, I listened to an Andrew Clements book called About Average. I listened to a lot of Andrew Clements books when my kids were young, and I don't know if I ever read or listened to this one or not, but this was really good. It was about a girl who really wanted to excel at something, and she just felt like most things she was just about average, and she gets made fun of because she made a list of the things that she was good at and things she wasn't good at and the things she was average about, and she threw them away, and this bully got a hold of the list and starts making fun of her. So it's how she deals with that and everything, and then there's another kind of storyline that's sort of building, and you're thinking, okay, what's going to happen here? And it all comes to a head at the end, and it was excellent. So and not very long at all. Andrew Clements is a fantastic author. If you've never read anything by Andrew Clements, get Frindle. Frindle is so good. I love it. But there's really none of his books that I don't like. He's got some excellent books, and they are almost all set in a school setting, and he just does an excellent job. For some reason, I don't think I had ever read Bunnicula, so I actually listened to the first 3 of the Bunnicula books by James Howe. This first one is actually written by James and Deborah Howe, his wife, who we find out in the author notes passed away not long after this one was written, and he did continue to write more in the series after her death, but this is just so cute. Such a good, fun story. It's really more about the dog than the rabbit. It's all told from the dog's perspective, and he writes about the other pets in the family. They're just super cute. The first one is just called Bunnicula, A Rabbit Tale of Mystery. And then the second one is Holiday Inn. And then the third one is The Celery Stalks at Midnight. There's, I think, another 6 more in the series. I definitely want to read all of them. I think they are so fun. And then what wasn't so fun was trying to listen to the Mary Poppins series. Now, I had listened to book 2 again earlier in the month, and I decided I really needed to get to books 3 and 4 because I own books 2, 3, and 4, and I just wanted to get through them and, you know, possibly list the whole lot in my eBay store. But I just did not enjoy these. Not really at all. There were parts that were fine, but I just didn't really like them at all. For one thing, Mary Poppins is not completely reliable. She can get the kids to behave, but at the end of every book, she disappears and just goes off and leaves the kids. So I don't know why they're excited to see her back. You know, the adults and everything are excited to see Mary Poppins back because they don't know how long she's going to stay. I mean, that's kind of irresponsible. And she kind of encourages the children to not be truthful because when they witness something fantastical happening that is caused by her and they want to talk about it, she acts like they have done a bad thing to bring it up and that they're lying to talk about it, you know. And it's just strange. So Mary Poppins is definitely very different. I would not say that she's practically perfect in every way at all. I think that Disney did a good job of taking the good parts of Mary Poppins and making a wonderful movie. They definitely did that. There are some things in at least the second book that are in the Mary Poppins movie. I don't know if there's any specific things in either of these books. Anyway, this is Mary Poppins Opens the Door. I think this is book 3. And then Mary Poppins in the Park is book 4. I think there's at least 6 books in the whole series. I don't know if I will read anymore. I might, but I'm not going to try to collect any more of them. I'm going to let these go for sure. Anyway, I'm not trying to knock Mary Poppins. I just didn't really enjoy these books. And they just about put me in a reading slump because I was determined to get these done early in the last 10 days of the month. And I thought, goodness, I've got to get these done and move on to something else. So anyway, I'm done with them now. If I ever revisit the series, it's going to be a couple of years from now because right now I just really don't want to. And then 2 more books I read right at the beginning of this 10 days. In fact, I mentioned them already in my middle of the month video. Both are by Gary Paulsen. I listened to a whole series by Gary Paulsen early in the month. It was the Tucket series, and those would be excellent middle grade books for June on the Range. But these 2 were just standalone books. This one is more of a memoir, My Life in Dog Years. I did not love this one, but it was okay. And then this one was kind of interesting. This is more of a sci-fi type book or a time travel type book. It's called The Transall Saga. And, you know, this might really fall under more of a YA category. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm just interested in reading all the Gary Paulsen books. Even if I don't always see eye to eye with all of them, I do enjoy reading them. And I got these 2 done. So that is all that I read in the last 10 days of May. Like I said, I will be back and I'll give you my total count for everything. I'm happy to say that I did complete the race as a hare and I did not take a nap at the end. I got done with just about as many books as I could expect to. I didn't even really have a final count until it was almost midnight on the last night. And I came close to a milestone that I didn't quite make, but it's okay. I still broke my own record and I'm happy about that, but I'll share that with you in the next video. So for now, that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book and God bless you.